Garfield, anybody from Garfield would really enjoy this because it's a great look at the town and the history of it and the foundation that these guys laid for all the teams that came after them. So I recommend it. Of course, I would recommend it.
You're kind of biased.
Yeah, it'll be out in November, and maybe sooner. But our target date is November 20th.
Yeah, I will say the name of the book is City of Champions: How a Gritty New Jersey Milltown Shocked High School Football by capturing the 1939 National Championship. I said that on the show last week, and wow, that's a hell of a title. Really long.
Yeah, we weren't sure what we're going to do with the title. I know the subtitle's a little long, but it does explain things. We were thinking of, I had a couple. We were thinking of just Boilermakers. We were thinking of Over the Rainbow because it occurred in 1939, and that's the same year that Wizard of Oz came out.
I like that, actually.
Obviously, this was their rainbow. And then my wife said something about the sign for what are you going to put the sign in that says City of Champions? Of course, when you drive into Garfield, it's the sign City of Champions. And it's the City of Champions because, well, partly because of this team. There was also because of Tippy Larkin and the holy name later Garfield Cadets all won national championships, and Tippy Larkin won a world welterweight belt. But I said, City of Champions, that's not a bad title for the book. So I called the publisher, and he really liked it. And so there it is, City of Champions.
Yeah, definitely. It means a lot to me because, again, as someone who's on a championship team in Garfield, this name City of Champions means a whole lot. I actually have, when I graduated, I put together a frame, and I made sure the sign City of Champions was in my frame because it meant a lot to me. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you something.
Sure.
I'm going to interview for a second. You played on the 1999 team.
Right.
Did you guys know the legend of Benny Babula and that team? Were you aware of that team?
Well, with us, for me it's a little different, and I'll explain my history with the team. My grandfather was actually in Garfield High School when that team happened. And his best friend was on the team. So it was.
And who was his best friend?
That's
right. You got me the tape for that. But who you remember who his best friend was?
I just remember his name off the top of my head at the moment. I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
Yeah.
But he's the one who got me the tape. He's the one who got me the tape, the 1939 National Championship tape, which is on YouTube for those who want to see it. I put it up on YouTube a while back when I was moving stuff over to digital. And that's how we found each other, actually. That's how we found each other.
Right. But I'm wondering, when you were in 1999, when you were playing football for Garfield, were you aware at that point that it actually would have been 60 years later, right?
Yes, it would have been 60 years
30,
later.
90, so,
and I'll tell you the truth. My team really didn't know much about it except for me, because what happened with me was I was running the school website at the time, and I looked at the calendar, and I'm like, ooh, I'll do something special with this. And I made it known that it was the 60th anniversary of the team. And that became a thing. And that's why it was so exciting that we got to do a championship that year for us. Because I made sure everyone knew.
Yeah, that was really cool. Wow. 60 years later, you got another championship. That's great.
It is surreal when you think about it from that perspective, especially because Coach Nucha was on the last team that won a championship in the 80s. So it's really weird how everything tied together.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, look, I know the saying is once a Boilermaker, always a Boilermaker.
Right.
And I didn't play football. I did play baseball for Garfield. And it's true. One of the things that I had my publisher out at the Hall of Fame dinner where you were, and he was just amazed. He came from a town in Connecticut, and he went to I think more of a prep school. But he was just amazed that one town could have so much community spirit and still remember its athletes like that. Because there were over 300 people.
It was a full house,
that night. And he was really impressed. And, obviously he now knows the story of the team that I've been writing about. And it's just, Garfield's a very unique community, and it still is, always was. And that's one of the things I do try to bring out in the book. I think even then it was unique among North Jersey communities in the way people came together. The fact that it was immigrants' kids were winning this championship. They were the sons of immigrants. And everybody look. If you're from Garfield, everybody comes together for whatever your differences are. And in that case, it was the Italian kids and the Polish kids and the Eastern European kids all came together to win a championship. And I think that spirit kind of just follows through year after year.
Well, it's funny. I had in my notes, it actually said, once a Boilermaker, always a Boilermaker, in my notes, because out here, when I was explaining, I'm going out to my hometown for this Hall of Fame, it was kind of confusion. Like, what's the big deal? Like, why do you want to go do this? I'm like, because it feels right. It's hard to explain to people what that sentiment means. Because you're right. It was a community. It still was when I was growing up. It's the small town thing. Like, I was able to walk everywhere all the time. You can't do that anymore in a big city like I live in now. You know?
Yeah.
It's weird how that works.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Garfield today. It still has that feel. I know it's changed. But there's enough of it still there that it feels like home. And my mom still lives there. I could go home and go to the house I grew up in, and I'm back in the 60s and the 70s. She's 95. It still lives in the same house. So for me, it's even more immediate, where I could go back and feel Garfield. But it doesn't really take that. It just takes a walk around town, and you get the feeling pretty quickly.
So my grandma still lives in her house in Garfield too. So it all ties together. And she was actually a part of the 100th anniversary celebration last year. She was in the
that
parade.
Was fantastic. Right.
Yeah, how was that experience? Because I saw pictures and I saw video, but it had to be surreal to be involved in that.
100 years, and I remember the 50-year celebration because I'm that old, and it was the 50-year jubilee, and I was in school, grammar school then, and the town was, they put out a special booklet, and the entire town got behind that. I remember there was a big parade and floats, and it was very exciting back then. So to actually remember the 50 years and realize that another 50 years has passed makes me feel rather old. But it's still a great thing for the city, and I hope that kids that grow up there now can get a feeling for the history of the town. It's
true. Speaking of history, we mentioned it a couple of times here. Obviously, I came out for the Hall of Fame, and I was trying to explain to people why this is a big deal. Because there are a lot of people listening to this show. I have a pretty international audience, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Can you educate the audience on the importance and the history of our Hall of Fame in Garfield High School?
Well, sure. I was actually on the original Hall of Fame back in the late 70s. I forgot exactly when. I was working at the Pacific Herald News back then, and they were putting together the Frank Dawson now runs it. Well, his father was running it back then. He organized the original committee, and since I was just out of high school, maybe 4 or 5 years, I guess, working at the Herald News, he asked me to be on it, and it was an honor then, and we were able to identify the kind of the pantheon, the Mount Rushmore of Garfield athletes at the time. Of course, Benny Babula was one of those, John Hollis. And it just grew from there. Every year you just added to it, and then they started adding teams. And I kind of left when I got the job in New York at the New York Coast. I couldn't put the time into the committee that I thought it really deserved because of all the time I was working in New York, and so I resigned. But just recently, as I started working on the book, I was asked to come back on. So I'm actually the only member of the only original member of the Hall of Fame. Now I'm back for a second time. It's like Scarface,
Wow.
Keep pulling you back in. So I'm on it again. But there are Butch Weitrack, who actually is older than me. Actually played. Butch was a senior on the baseball team and a great player and a Hall of Fame member. He was a great catcher. I was a sophomore when he was a senior. He had come on after I left. He years after that, and I played ball with him at Garfield. And so I'm saying I think he is the longest standing member now. Although I'm back on that after me, he's the longest standing member. And so it's a good cross section of the year graduation years, so that kind of all the teams are covered. And for instance, Richie Rosillo went in this year. He was a second baseman, I believe, on a 65 or 66 team. And I remember I was 12 years old at 66, and I was playing Little League for Rotary and Garfield National, and they had Garfield High School had a great team that year. Saganek and Rosillo and Rusnak. There was some really good players on that team, and I went to every game just to watch the high school kids play. And since I was a second baseman, and Richie Rosillo was the second baseman on the Garfield High team, And so Richie Rizzillo was the guy. I wanted to be Richie Rizzillo. I wanted to grow up and be Richie. And I actually told him that. I actually saw him on the dais at the dinner, and I told him that story. And I said, it's funny, but you were my idol when I was a 12-year-old, and I ended up playing second base for the high school. Not as good as he did, I must say, but I did play a little bit. At least I got on the field.
Yeah, it's about right. You know what? I feel the same way with my football team because I got trumped from my spot a couple of times by Louis Castillo, who went on to be an NFL player. So that's kind of important there,
Yeah.
As for the Hall of Fame night, it was a great night. It was emotional. It was a fun experience. I will comment because we talked about it in the email, and I got to bring it up on the air. I did not know the second verse of our alma mater until you sang it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know the second verse. I cracked up.
How did you like my rendition, by the way?
We enjoyed it at our table. We enjoyed it, but admittedly, we were sitting there because we remember the first verse from our graduation. It's been a long time, but we've remembered it.
Yeah.
And then we got to the second verse.
Yeah.
We all looked at. There's a second verse. We forgot.
Yeah, even though we also have to leave thee and wander far from sight of you, our hearts will ever praise thee. Our love for Garfield still rings true. That's the second verse.
It's very true, though. And you say it that way. You say it plain old straight up.
Yeah.
It's very true.
And when you realize that alma mater extended all the way back to the beginning of Garfield High School. Garfield High School started in 1919, so in 1 year, it will be celebrating its 100th anniversary.
Wow.
The first Garfield High School football team was 1922. And I don't have the exact scores, but their first two games, they were outscored I think it was 129-0, something like that. Don't quote me exactly. And in 1924, they ended up winning the Bergen County League 2 years later with some of the real legends in Garfield sports, John Hollis, Stanley Piella, John Miklas. And that was one of the teams that we honored. Because when I came back on, I realized that there were some teams had fallen through the cracks in the 1924 team, which gave Garfield its first championship of any kind in any sport, I thought should have been honored. So we did that. But as for the alma mater, the alma mater goes all the way back to those years, and it was first written, I believe, in 1919. So when you consider that, when you're singing the alma mater, you're actually singing with everyone, kind of in spirit, with all the Boilermakers throughout history.
That is pretty cool. When you say it that way, I never thought about it from that perspective. That was never explained to us in high school. It was kind of just this old school song, and now that you're explaining it, it actually works better in my mind.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you have a bond with everyone that went through Garfield through the alma mater. I think it was important to sing because the reason I wasn't scheduled to sing that, but I said we discussed it on the committee that I think there was supposed to be a high school student sing the alma mater, and and I love to sing the alma mater, and it wasn't being sung. So when I got up there to introduce the teams that I was inducting, I said to Frank Dawson, I said, so are we singing the alma mater? And he said, kind of shrugged his shoulders. I said, okay, I'm singing the alma mater. So I asked everybody to get up, and I just burst into song, and I hope I did a good job. I think the room. I think most people were singing in the room, and I know you're not alone about the second verse because everybody was about to sit down after the first verse, and I said, "Oh no, we got a second verse." I began that.
It was definitely it made you know what kind of world you're in when that kind of happens. It's like, oh, we have an alma mater. We have to do this. It's a big deal here.
Yeah.
Now you said you
inducted. No, it's like singing the national. It's like singing the national anthem, right?
Very true.
Before a game, you got to sing the alma mater before a Hall of Fame induction.
Very true. Like you said, you inducted.
But it's one of the cool things about Garfield.
Yeah, you inducted 4 different teams this year. I had the program in front of me. Remind me what you did. It was 24, 30, 28, and 31 basketball. So
right. Yeah, it was a 24 football team. It was the 1930 football team, which was Art Argauer's first football team.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
And they were in 1928. Garfield was known as the Scoreless Wonders, and they didn't go the entire season without scoring. I think they scored in the last game, but they were pretty pathetic. The Bergen Record dubbed them the Scoreless Wonders.
Wow. And
then the next year they had I think they won a few games, but then they decided they were going to fire the coaching staff, as often happens. And Art Arguer was brought in. He had been a great athlete